I'm a spirit speaking, truth seeking, heart reaching, knowledge leaking, seed sowing, harvest reaping, man of me or me.
MyPDFBooks.com. That's books with a Z.
Once again, this broadcast has been brought to you by MyPDFBooks.com. That's books with a Z, where reading fundamental. Also brought to you by BindedBooks.com, where treasures are bound. Be sure to get all of your teas at My Son's Teas, the tea of teas, divinely prepared at herbsofmyaunt.com. Be sure to check out all of those musical stylings by Brian Hicks Spade at bhspademusic.com. For your everyday items and religious regalia, be sure to check out MorrisHaberdasher.com. And for that everyday especial Morris drip, be sure to check out MorrisSachi.com. And all of these companies are powered by ALO Design Pros. Design your online business strategy today.
No such thing as failure, baby. Don't forget who made you. You can't be thinking minor when you need to be thinking major. They made you think they saved you, but can't nobody save you. Look here, before they give they say on the things they say you
Peace.
They say you can't play this economic game unless it's about the rules that they made.
Peace, love, and light, noble empresses.
What you have yet to understand.
Welcome back to another Bbt Book Club. I'm your host, Noble Moso L, Mufti of the Burning Bush Tabernacle, Science Temple and School. Happy Holy Friday to all nobles, all Muslims, all empresses, all Muslims and Muslims, no matter what sect of Islam. You know, this is a sacred, holy time. We respect all the prophets, all the sages, all the light seekers of all nationalities. And again, today is Holy Friday. You know, every Friday we offer a few books from our library. If you would like to get any books from us, you can email myself. At the bottom ticker, you see Herbs of Mayat at herbsofmayat.com. And what you be doing ain't everybody business. Very good women getting rarer by the minute. You the last of what's left. Provide herbal teas and herbal blends, along with our many books on history, wellness, business, finance, ancient history and heritage, biblical history, with a lot of old Bibles, old manuscripts and documents, rare. I welcome you all to come tap in with us. Check us out at mypdfbooks.com. That's books with a Z. Also, bindedbooks.com if you'd like to see any physical copies of any books that we offer. And all this week, we've been talking and discussing about a lot of biblical history, a lot of the origins of the so-called Black people, copper-colored race, people of Moorish American descent. I mean, this is a big topic that is still going on and still serious to know our origins so we can properly represent ourselves in the present. And so just on that topic, I wanted to offer some of the literature and some books that we offer, some heritage, history, you know, some of our origins. As we know, We come from the tribe of Judah, lineage of David by blood. David had certain sons. They say we come from Ham, ancient Canaanites, ancient Moabites, ancient Kemites. As Americans, we have a vast lineage of bloodlines in the Americas that extend to all four corners of the earth. And as adults, we should really understand deeper our history and our heritage beyond enslavement. They just wanna stop it cause they see it on a mission. On the tip I could give you, watch what niggas you be kissing. Everybody don't love you, baby, everybody different. And what you be doing ain't everybody business. Very good women getting rarer by the minute. You the last of what's left, don't let nobody trick you. I just want you to think about it. Wrap your mind around it. Do you hear what I'm saying? This is one of the documents that we offer. It's talking about the theological significance of Africa and Africans in the Bible. And this is some of the many pieces of literature we offer. This is by Kunt Holter, University College in Norway. It's a group of essays. The essays discuss the potential of the theological significance of the so-called African presence in the Bible. That is, biblical texts referring to entities that today would be labeled African. In particular, reference to Egypt and Cush. The focus, therefore, is on the encounter between these texts and the socio-religious experiences and concerns of contemporary African biblical studies. The essay concludes that the presence of Africa and Africans has the potential of balancing the universalistic trajectory of the Bible. Without a concrete example such as Africa, universalism would be empty rhetoric. And without a universalistic frame of interpretation, the African presence would face the danger of simply repeating, although this time from an Afrocentric perspective, the ethnocentric fallacy we have seen so much by Eurocentrists in the past. Some of the key words are Africa, the Bible, Cush, Egypt, Ethiopia, hermeneutics, something Sheik always talks about, interpretation, and theology. And just an introduction speaks on the title of this essay presupposes two interpretive claims. First, that there is some presence of Africa and Africans in the Bible. And second, that this presence has theological significance. Let me, as an entry point to answering these questions, illustrate but also problematize the two claims by reflecting a little on the interpretation of one particular text in the Old Testament, and that's Amos 9:7, which includes a famous comparison of the chosen people of Israel and a people located on the African continent, namely the Cushites. We know there's a very deeper history to the Cushites and Ethiopia and all those tribes of Ethiopia. And it says, first, when approaching this text, the question of the supposed presence of Africa and Africans in the Bible soon encounters some chronological problems. Admittedly, more or less all academic studies of this text agree its use of the term Cushites refers to an ethnic and or political entity which is known from various ancient Near Eastern sources, whose heartland was located south of Egypt along the Nile. In other words, it is relatively certain that the text refers to an entity that historically was linked to the northeastern corner of the African continent. However, it should be acknowledged that the existence of a link between the Cushites here in Amos 9:7 and the geographical space we know today as the African continent does not necessarily make these Cushites an African people. The idea of Africa as a unified entity is of a much later date than the Amos text, presupposing cartographic and political ideological concepts that were unknown not only to the first readers of Amos, but to many generations of readers of biblical literature. And I could just say, just on that topic, I mean, you can't just, Africans were nomadic people. There were many nomadic tribes. So there were tribes who migrated outside of Africa and to all different corners of the earth to colonize, to populate. And a lot of times people get lost in just being in Africa or just being in certain regions. And as we know, there was proof, and we have books on Atlantis, on Mu, on Pangea, when the planets and certain places, certain landmass were closer together. Certain ways to travel was faster than even we know of today. Because we offer another book that I'll show right after this called, the Ancient Arabs. Who were the ancient Arabs? Certain tribes can be considered Arab and African because of that region of the world and how people migrated. And just to continue, it says, in other words, when we talk about the African presence in the Bible, proceeding from its references to Cushites or other ethnic and or political entities located on what we know today as the African continent, we should acknowledge that we are introducing a technical and cartographic and political ideology term that is younger than the text phenomena it is used to describe. Nevertheless, in the history of biblical interpretation, the term Africa and its close relatives in the historical literature, the blacks, Negroes, etc., have indeed been used, and as such, they have their own interpretive history, often with quite negative associations of slavery and contempt. This problematic part of the use of the terms should not prevent us from seeing the concerns of contemporary African biblical scholarship when they argue that biblical texts referring to such political and or ethnic groups located on today's African continent, should be identified as African. What it should do, though, is to make us aware of some of the hermeneutical challenges that are created by such identification of Africa in the Bible.
And on the ways they say you can't play this economic game unless it's about the rules that they made. Haha, here's the funny thing.
I just wanted to break down one of these words here.
They're terrified, honestly.
Hermeneutical.
You'll be running this world someday.
We can all know what that means.
I just need you to stay educated. You ain't no different from your classmates, but I just know what you can do when you dedicated. I can tell the way your head
Hermeneutics is the theory and methodology of interpretation, especially of scriptural texts. It is the science of interpretation and explanation, which is also known as exegesis. That branch of theology. So hermeneutics is a branch of theology. And we know theo, the study of God. Theology, which defines the laws whereby the meaning of the scriptures is to be ascertained. As we know, the Bible is written in many different formats. It's not all literal. It can be parable, mythology, numerology, astrology, and astronomy. But to continue, next book offered is called The Unknown Arabs. It is a clear and definitive proof of the dark complexion of the original Arabs and the Arab origin of the so-called African Americans. And this is a great must-have book. You can have this book for a small donation tonight, Friday, March 7th. We're on the 7th. I'm offering this book tonight for a small donation. You can send through Cash App, $MAATSUNZ at Cash App. And we're offering these books for a small donation. Send your email to myself at herbsofmayat@herbsofmayat.com. You can get this book from me. And you want this book because this talks about the origins of the Arabs, or as we know, the Arab, ARAP, which represents a dark-skinned person, melanated being. Just to go through the intro, where the Arabs are found, the types of Arabs, Arab immigration from the Arabian Peninsula, the misconception of the appearance of a pure Arab, what most people think the Arabs look like, the reasons for this misconception. Because this is what happens. We get caught into one image or bloodline, and we think that is the only representation Chapter 5 breaks down the reasons for the misconception. Chapter 6, insight into what started the European aversion towards people of color. The true appearance of the original Arabs. Misunderstood Arabic terms. How the Arabs of the past described the Arabs. Chapter 9, how individual well-known Arabs and Arab tribes were described. Chapter 10, the cause of the fair complexion of many of the current Arabs. The origins of the so-called African Americans. Descent from Arab tribes known to be Arabs. In chapter 12, descent from unknown Arabs. So, just to read the preface, as its title implies, this book covers two topics. In the first part of the book, he attempts to correct the misconception that most people have of what a pure Arab should look like. He started by explaining the origin of the misconception and then proceeded to give a true picture of what the original Arabs looked like. In the second part of this book, he demonstrates how the so-called Black Americans or African Americans are descendant from a conglomeration of peoples and tribes, for the most part, Arab origin. I show how the so-called Black Americans or African Americans are in reality just as Arab, as if not more Arab than any Arab in the Arab world, and should in fact be called Arab Americans. Very interesting. His purpose is not to prove that the Arab race is better than any other race, or to claim that people whose complexions are different shades of brown, as so-called Black Americans, are better than those whose complexions are red, as Europeans, and those descendant from Europeans. The purpose in writing this book is simply to revive certain knowledge that has over the years become lost or concealed. I hope that the readers understand the importance of having knowledge of the origins of peoples and tribes, and knowledge of the complexions and appearances of these people and tribes. Having such knowledge can avert many conflicts. For example, the Palestinian problem, which has caused and continues to cause excuse me. Cause so many deaths wouldn't exist if people had this type of knowledge that the author is trying to revive. A people have been stripped of their entire country as a result of the lack of this knowledge. Surely, if the world knew that the Hebrews, who are the cousins of the Arabs, were a dark-skinned people, The European Jews would never have been able to claim Palestine as their own. If it were common knowledge that the Hebrews looked like those in the picture below, the European Jews would never have even imagined trying to claim that they were Hebrews and that Palestine was theirs. So I hope that no one suggests that this type of knowledge is not of great importance. I also hope that readers read all the information in this book very carefully and truly understand it. There are many important facts in this book that cannot be found in any other book today. Having said all of this, I would like to state categorically that what makes one individual better than the next is not race or color, but character. And I hope that no one is offended by any of the truths that are revealed in this book, because it is certainly not my intention to be offensive in any way, or to anyone, excuse me. And this is a picture of the ancient Hebrews. It's a very classic image. You can see the curly hair and beards. And this is just a great book, a must-have. In the introduction of the book, it says, "Learn enough about genealogy for you to know your origins and to keep ties with your kin." And that's a saying by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It goes into where Arabs are found. The Arabian Peninsula, which is located a stone's throw from Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia, on the eastern shore of that narrow body of water called the Red Sea, has traditionally been accepted as the place of origin of the Arabs. You can see on this map. It's a dark picture, but this is the backside of Africa on the left. You will cross this small landmass, and this is the Arabian Peninsula. You cross the Isthmus of Suez, or the Suez Canal. And like it said, the Arabian Peninsula is a rock or stone's throw from Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia. This is all where Kushite bloodline comes from. Kemetic, Moorish lineages come from these lands. And it says the Arabian Peninsula and the so-called African continent were once connected. However, two events subsequently caused the separation of the area called Africa from the Arabian Peninsula. The first event was a depression in the Red Sea that took place many years ago. This depression left the area called Africa connected to Arabia only at the Isthmus of Suez. Finally, the area called Africa was completely separated from Arabia when the Suez Canal was built in the 19th century. In spite of the fact that today there is an attempt to make a distinction between people in the area called Africa and the people on the Arabian Peninsula, in reality, the area called Africa is nothing more than one of the areas that has been occupied by the Arabs since time immemorial. It must be understood that before the European colonists divided the world into different continents and countries, the existing distinctions between certain tribes in the area called Africa and those on the Arabian Peninsula did not exist. It was these colonists who decided that all of the peoples in the area they called Africa were Africans, Hamites, children of Ham, or Cushites, sons of Cush, while only the people on the Arabian Peninsula were Arabs or Semites. So I'm not going to read all of this, but I really encourage brothers and sisters to reach out for this book. Peace, peace. Peace and love, sheep. Like I said, this is a very rare book that we have in our catalog. I'll skim through, it talks about the different types of Arabs. It says, when the end of time approaches, the children of Kentura, Kentura, will make their appearance. So this is a great book, man. It breaks down the Arabs. It says the Arabs are divided into 4 different types, each having Sam, the son of Noah, as a common ancestor. It says all Arabs trace their origins to Sam or Ham, the son of Noah, and hence the word Samites or Semites used to describe them. The children of Sam, the son of Noah, are Lod, Arphaxad, Elam, Aram, and Asund. The 4 types of Arabs are the Arab el-Badi, the extinct Arabs, the Arab el-Araba, the Qatani Arabs, the Arab el-Mustarib, the Adania Arabs, and the rarely mentioned Banu Keturah. As you can see, this is a book, a very great book of scholarship, y'all. It breaks down, has a family tree. Make sure y'all can see this. A family tree. Showing the breakdown from Noah to Ham or Sam, Elam, Lod, Amalika. Then it goes into the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians. So these are melanated Moorish people, Moorish tribes, along with other ones, the Elamites, the Hymenites, the Gara, which goes and links to the Mandingo. The Carthaginians go down to the Akan and the Ashanti of Ghana. So come on, man, this history, you're not really going to find too many places that show this lineage and talk about this heritage. And this is one of the must-have books that does it. We have to understand the breakdown of our ancestry in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in the Pacific Islands. This history is real. It even goes down into the Yoruba of Nigeria. As we know, the Igbo and the Igbo tribe, the Hebrew origins. We know it just Hebrew just means to cross over, crossing over water. It's an action. Let's share this book. This book has a lot of wisdom. Again, this is called The Unknown Arabs. Anyone would like to get this book, reach out. I'm not going to stay with that one. This is a good one I really wanted to get to. This one is called, excuse me, How the Arabian Nights Inspired the American Dream. How the Arabian Nights inspired the American dream. From 1790 all the way up to 1935. And as you can see on this cover, you know, this is a European wearing a fez with the words Islam on it. How the Arabian Nights inspired the American dream from 1790 to 1935. Just to read some of the context. The introduction is Playing Eastern. Chapter 1, Capitalism and the Arabian Nights, from 1790 to 1892. X, Oriental Lux, Playing Eastern for a Living. 1838 to 1875. Wise Men of the East and the Market for American Fraternalism. 1850 to 1892. Arab Athleticism and exoticization of the American Dream. 1870 to 1920. Making the Familiar Strange, the Racial and Politics of Eastern Exotic. 1893 to 1929. Chapter 6, Eastern Femininities for Modern Women. 1893 to 1930. Turbans and Capitalism. 1893 to 1930. Sign of Promise, African Americans and Eastern Persona in the Great Depression. So this is a great must-have book. Talks about the influence of Moorish culture and Eastern cultures on European Americans. You know, how they would take on Oriental, or they would fall in love with Eastern ways, Eastern habits, Eastern rituals. They would go to some of these countries and go to some of these sacred ceremonies of our ancestors and fall in love with the culture, They would call it turning Turk was one of the terms, but also Oriental, as we know in the the Masonry and different groups. They embrace the terms like Muslim or Muslim. On their fezzes, they put names of these ancient places and ancient people and honor their custodians of the wisdom that our ancestors had for centuries. But I'm not going to go too far into this book, but it goes hand in hand with that ancient Arabs book. And we'll move on to another book. Excuse me. This book right here is, excuse me, The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. And this is by the scholar Drusilla Dungy Houston, first published in 1926. Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. The foreword. This is a pioneering, long-lost work of Afrocentric history. Drusilla Dungy Houston, 1876 to 1941, was a teacher, journalist, and self-taught historian. Inspired by W.E.B. Du Bois, the Negro, Houston undertook a lifelong quest to discover African history from an African American perspective. Today, it is clear that conventional historians' fixation on dead white men misses huge parts of the historical picture. Africa had several advanced civilizations in antiquity, which flourished at the same time as the better-known European and Asian ones. However, at the time that Houston wrote, history was viewed through a Eurocentric perspective, and any mention of the advanced African cultures was considered on par with Atlantis. Houston believed the Kushite civilization to be the motherland of humanity. The Kushite civilization did exist, although it was not ancient as Egypt, and certainly not the origin of all culture. Nevertheless, the Kushites were the earliest known Black African civilization, reaching its peak between 1750 and 1500 BCE, and lasting until the 4th century CE. The Kushite Empire occupied what is now the Sudan, with the capital at Meroe on the Nile. At their highest point, Kushites even conquered and ruled ancient Egypt from 750 to 650 BCE. Because of their geographical isolation, they had nowhere near the impact on other parts of the world that Houston attributed them. The Kushites were heavily influenced by the older Egyptian culture, rather than the other way around. They left behind fields of hundreds of small, steep-angled burial pyramids, the design of which was borrowed from Egypt and scaled down. Houston wrote 3 volumes of which only this one, the first, known as Wonderful Ethiopians, was published. She had no staff and no formal training in academic procedures. Living in Oklahoma, her access to specialized libraries was limited. One can only wonder what she would have made of Google. Although Houston identifies many of her sources in the body of the text, there are few footnotes or other apparatus that such a bold theory would require for consideration. The writing is vigorous and popularized, which also makes it a difficult sell for historians. The received text of this book could have used a bit of proofing and editing, but given the circumstances under which it was published, this is understandable. The compelling part of this book is that it exists at all. While we debate her theories, one historical fact is clear. Houston left her own mark as a pioneering advocate of the study of Black history. So this sister put it all on the line to illuminate the origins of the Kushite people, not even being a historian. So this is definitely a must-have book. Again, the Wonderful Ethiopians and the Kushite of the ancient Kushite Empire. There was one part in here I did want to read. I was reading earlier. Just a preface to, understanding more of our Moorish history, Phoenician, Canaanite, ancient merchants. A Moor is just a merchant, a businessman, a woman, a trader of goods, services. And this one chapter right here, in the chapter on the ancient Kushite commerce, we follow the ships of these early, daring, and skillful seamen who, before the dawn of history, had blazed out the ocean trails that the Phoenicians later followed. We find irrefutable evidence of the presence of these daring conquerors in the primitive legends, religion, and institutions of America. Next, out of the dim haze of far iniquity, rise the indistinct lines of Atlantis of old, the race that gave civilization to the world, the race that tamed the animals and gave us domestication of plants. The gods of the ancient world were the kings and queens of mystic Atlantis. The chapter, The Gods of Old, makes plain that the deities of Greece and Rome were also the kings and queens of the ancient Kushite Empire of the Ethiopians, which was either the successor of the most famous branch of the Atlantic race. It was about these princes and heroes that all the wonderful mythology of the ancients was woven. They were the deities that were worshipped in India, Chaldea, Egypt, and in Greece and Rome, which nations themselves must have been related to the race of Atlantis. That tradition said had been overwhelmed by the sea. Atlantis could not have been mythical, for her rulers were the subjects of the art and literature of all the primitive nations, until the fall of paganism long after the birth of Christ. Another division of Atlantis was transatlantic America. There, the mysterious mound builders represent the ancient Kushite race. So this woman is connecting the Moors of Africa and the Moors of America, because she's talking about another division of Atlantis was transatlantic America. There, the mysterious mound builders represent the ancient Kushite race. And in the Bible, another term for black is Kushite or Kushi. We study the peculiar culture and genius of the fierce Aztec, who acknowledged that he received the germs of civilization from the earlier Kushite inhabitants. So it has some more right here. I'm not going to read all this, but I definitely encourage brothers, sisters, reach out if you like this book, The Wonderful Ethiopians. A must have. You know, so down here. This right here, the Kebra Nagast. All my Rastafarian brothers and Garveyites, they all know about this book. It was translated by a European, Sir E.A. Wallace Budge, a master historian. Just to read the preface. This volume contains a complete English translation of the famous Ethiopian work, the Kebra Nagast, the glory of kings, the glory of the kings of Ethiopia. This work has been held in peculiar honor in Abyssinia for several centuries, and throughout the country it has been and still is venerated by the people as containing the final proof of their descendant. Excuse me. Their final proof of their descendant from the Hebrew patriarchs and of the kinship of their kings of the Solomonic line with Christ, the Son of God. The importance of the book, both for the kings and the people of Abyssinia, is clearly shown by the letter that King John of Ethiopia wrote to the late Lord Granville in August 1872. The king says there is a book called Kiriva Nagast, which contains the law of whole of Ethiopia, and names of shum or chiefs and churches and provinces are in this book. I pray you find out who has got this book and send it to me, for in my country my people will not obey my orders without it. The first summary of the contents of the Kebra Nagast was published by Bruce as far back as 1813, but little interest was roused by his somewhat bald precise. And in spite of the labors of Bezold and Hughes Leroux, the content of the work are still practically unknown to the general reader in England. It is hoped that the translation given in the following pages will be of use to those who have not the time or opportunity for pursuing the Ethiopic Original. Excuse me for 1 second. Yeah, this is another must-have, the Kibra Nagast. Another document of scholarship. Talking about this ancient history of Ethiopia, Abyssinia, Kush. You know, these are the bloodlines of David. These are biblical bloodlines. And all the Rastafarians are people of Rastafari. That's the bloodline of Haile Selassie, Queen Makeda. You know, as I was saying here, one of the this was a letter written by the King John of Ethiopia in 1872. So this is definitely another book, a must-have. See what else I may have. That might be it. This is one of the documents we went over last week. Called Abraham Hannibal, the most famous Arab of the Russian Empire. I'm not going to go through this too much, but it was a great document going through the heritage of Alexander Pushkin and just the Moorish bloodlines, man. I mean, this is something we all should be learning about, all studying. Just getting a better, full understanding of. There was one more document I'm going to share, one more book. 1 second. Y'all can see this. This is the Bbt Reyes map. The Bbt Reyes map of 1513. Show you a picture of the man, Bbt Reyes. This is one of his statues. Definitely a man of Moorish descent. You see his turban. But again, he was an Ottoman Moorish navigator, cartographer. And his book breaks down, the life of himself, Bbt Reyes, description of maps, Europe and Africa, the Atlantic islands, South America, the southern continent, the Christopher Columbus inscription, Puerto Rico and the Lesser Antilles, Hispaniola and the Bahamas, Cuba and Central America, maps, I mean, this is another must-have book. And it says the Piri Reyes map of 1513 is one of the most beautiful, most interesting, and most mysterious maps to have survived from the great age of discoveries. Yet it is one of the least understood maps, this monumentous and remarkable period in the history of cartography and geographical explorations. Many diverse claims have been made regarding this map, that it includes a copy of a map made in 1498 by Christopher Columbus, that it is the oldest map of the Americas, and that it is the most accurate map made in the 16th century. Some have argued that it shows evidence of the ability of the map maker to measure and perform spherical trigonometry calculations centuries ahead of its time, that it provides evidence of a worldwide seafaring civilization. And we know those seafaring civilizations were Ottoman, Phoenician, Canaanite, Kemetic. So many nations were seafaring during these times. And it says it provides evidence of a worldwide seafaring civilization existing tens of thousands of years ago, and that it proves Earth was visited by aliens from other planets. These issues and others will be examined in this book. A detailed examination of the delineations, place names, inscriptions, and layout of the map will be made. I hope that this analysis will answer some of the questions surrounding this fascinating cartographic artifact and indicate possible directions of more exhaustive future studies. Although some of the cartographic depictions on the map may appear unusual to the modern eye, these depictions are wholly within the general body of cartographical, and geographical knowledge of the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance. It will also be shown that the Piri Reyes map of 1513 may be one of the most important maps of the time to have survived, because it probably does contain a copy of a map made by Columbus or under his early supervision, not in 1498 as previously supposed, but 2 or 3 years earlier. And we know that's close to 1492. Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, who were doing their best to rid Spain and Europe of the Moors and ancient Hebrews. And there were many Moors and many map makers in Europe who were of Moorish descent. This is a fact. So, this is definitely a book to have. This is definitely a great one to have. Let's see if I can show some images. Like I said, the life of Piri Reyes. He was a cartographer who made the map identified in inscription number 4 on the map. He was the famous Ottoman admiral known as Piri Reyes. He was born Muhyiddin Piri, the son of Hachi Mehmet, probably in Gallipoli, at the northwest extremity of the Dardanelles, about 1465 and 1470. At the age of 12, he joined the crew of his uncle, Ghazi Kamal, 1450 to 1510. A corsair or privateer. And we know corsairs and privateers were of the Moorish lineage from the Barbary Wars, the Barbary pirates. In 1495, at the invitation of Sultan Bayezid II, 1447 to 1513, reigned 1481 to 1512. His uncle joined the Ottoman navy with the rank of Rez, which means admiral or captain, and became known as Kemal Rez. Piri served under his uncle's tutelage for 14 years. 6 of those years, from 1487 to 93, were spent along the coast of North Africa, Italy, Spain, and the islands of the Western Mediterranean. He later wrote that during this time, we sailed on the Mediterranean and fought the enemy of our religion mercilessly. Only a few decades earlier, Constantinople had fallen to the Turks. And we know Turks is another synonym for people of melanated people or Moorish blood. And it says, Turkish naval power, already strong in the Black Sea, grew in the Mediterranean at the expense of the Venetians, Genoese, and Iberian states. Iberia was modern-day Spain. Piri assisted in transporting the Muslims and Jewish population in Granada from Spain to North Africa during the time of the Reconquista of Spain by Ferdinand and Isabella. Sea battles Piri engaged in under his uncle included some at Valencia, Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. In the war with Venice between 1499 and 1502, he captained his own ship in a fleet commanded by Kamal Reis. So I'm not going to read all of that, but this is a very interesting story about him and what side some of these Moors were on. Just like we say, certain people were capturing and making people prisoners of war or kicking people out of certain areas. I mean, certain people were for hire back in these times. And, just reading that little bit right there just got me wanting to, learn more about this brother's story. And I hope you would like to too. So reach out to me. Get this book, The Piri Reyes Map. Let's see if I have any other books I want to share before we go. Like I said, you can email me. Email me at these two emails, Mayat Sons, MAATSONS, SONS or at Herbs of Mayat, HERBSOFMAAT at herbsofmayat.com. Our books have herbal teas, herbal blends to go with, go great with your studies, to help you focus, help you cleanse your lungs, your mind, your blood. All this is needed. All this is part of our brotherhood at the Burning Bush Tabernacle. We are a school. We welcome you to join us for workouts every weekend at 11 o'clock Eastern with our Mufti of Wellness and Fitness, Malik Reed El. Like I said, we have books, and then we have class after our workouts at 1:30 on Saturday, and then we work out again at 11 on Sunday, and have class at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So I welcome all brothers and sisters, all my friends that know me, all my brothers who are true scholars and want to build up your library. Reach out to me, call me. My number is 202-744-8440. Reach out to me, get some of these books. If you want any turbans or fezzes or kufis, jewelry, suits, we're a one-stop shop. We're having our Moorish ball and meet and greet, our 5th annual, back down in Peoria, Arizona, March 20th to the 24th. So anybody's in the area of Arizona, Vegas, come tap in with us, break bread with us. We're going to be, doing a lot of new projects. We invest in land. We invest in each other's businesses, physical growth, financial growth. We're a nonprofit, and we put our money together to invest in things, in our businesses, our land, in our school. So don't be afraid to donate. It'll be going to a great cause. We are the Burning Bush Tabernacle. We'll give you a tax-exempt receipt, any of your donations. But we really welcome brothers and sisters to come private to our classes and come listen and ask questions consistently, because that's what a school is about. Everybody elevating, not just staying on one level. So with all that being said, I appreciate everybody for joining this happy holy day. This is some of the things that we offer in our school. Let me get this on for the bottom. Okay, this is some of our study group study materials you get: the Moorish Holy Quran, SO Science Workbook, the Quranic Study Guide, Discover the Key to the Moorish Questionnaire, along with the Grand Sheikh has a plethora of books, over 20 books on fitness, on wellness, on health, on what to eat. And he's compiled a lot of books on all this ancient wisdom in a digestible format that all brothers and sisters would appreciate. So with all that being said, I appreciate all your nobles, empresses, for tapping in. We are the Burning Bush Tabernacle. I'm your host and Mufti and Minister, Noble Moso L. Signing out. Peace and love.
I'm a spirit speaking, truth seeking, heart reaching, knowledge leaking, seeds sowing, harvest reaping, man of meager means. I have yet.
mypdfbooks.com. That's books with a Z.
Once again, this broadcast has been brought to you by mypdfbooks.com. That's books with a Z, where reading fundamental. Also brought to you by bindedbooks.com, where treasures are bound. Be sure to get all of your teas at My Son's Teas, the tea of teas divinely prepared at herbsofmyaunt.com. Be sure to check out all of those musical stylings by Brian Hicks Spade at bhspademusic.com. For your everyday items and religious regalia, be sure to check out morrishaberdasher.com. And for that everyday especial Morris drip, be sure to check out morsachi.com. And all of these companies are powered by ALO Design Pros. Design your online business strategy today.
No such thing as failure, baby. Don't forget.